Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. We've been slowly going through the book of James, and when I say slow, we are literally doing one verse today, okay? So today we're going to be reading James chapter 1, verse 12. This passage is challenging, and I think it's beautiful kind of how it encompasses everything we've already talked about this week. Let's read it together. James chapter 1, verse 12 says this: "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." Something beautiful about this passage is it kind of shows us where James got a lot of his inspiration from. This is the first example of James using inspiration from the Sermon on the Mount, which is a sermon that Jesus himself preached. What's interesting is you actually see nuances of that throughout the book of James, which I love. James was reading up before he started writing this book, and his inspiration came from Jesus's sermons themselves. Pretty incredible. But in here, it talks about those that face trials and persecution, which we've already been talking about this week. But then it talks about a crown of life. What does that mean? Now, this is not talking about some big gold crown with a bunch of jewels and gems. This crown of life is actually referring to eternity. It's talking about salvation, that what we're working towards, what we're striving for, what we are looking towards in the future with joy and anticipation is heaven. That really all of the struggles that we face in this world, they pale in comparison to the glory that is set before us. We in this culture are so quick to just get focused on the here and now. And I get that. Life is real. We got a lot of things, a lot of pressures, responsibilities, all sorts of stuff that are vying for our attention all the time. The problem with that is oftentimes we can get distracted. We can get a distorted view of what it actually means to trust in the Lord. And so here James is reminding us that we're actually blessed when we persevere under trial. Because when we've stood that test of time, when we've finished our race, so to speak, that person will receive this crown of life, that eternal prize, which is heaven itself with God, that the Lord promised to those who love him. This reminds me of another verse that I just want to touch on really quickly. This is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, beginning in verse 16. Listen to what it says. "Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away." And if you're like me in your 40s or up, you understand, I feel like I'm wasting away sometimes. Our bodies, from the moment we're born, are already beginning the process of our end, right? So even though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Praise God. Pastor Nabil always says there's no expiration date on your giftings. You see, God does not value the young over the old. Even if you're old and you're feeling that ache in your back, God is still renewing us day by day. It says in verse 17, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." Hey, even though our trials and struggles can seem huge, and I'm not downplaying something that you might be facing, but in an eternal perspective, they're light and they're momentary in comparison to the eternity that waits ahead. In verse 18, it tells us what to do. "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is seen is eternal." You know, in 2 Corinthians, it really echoes what James is saying here in verse 12. He's reminding us to persevere under trial, not because it's going to be easy, not because it's going to be fun, but because when we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, when we recognize the difference between the temporary and the eternal, we can continue to persevere with the hope that heaven is the goal. The goal is not to, all the other things we talked about earlier this week, have a financial portfolio, have the most likes on Facebook, have the perfect home, perfect family, perfect all these things. Although that's fun, God says the goal is me. The goal is to come home to me. The goal is to have a relationship where you trust me, you're tethered to me, you're following me, you're growing in your relationship with me. Way back to Monday, the first day of this week, when we talked about to be mature and complete, that comes through these tests. And so instead of going, what's happening? We really truly need to embrace the test, because it's during those times that it reminds us that our value, our purpose, our goal is heaven. And it's found in our relationship with God. I hope that's an encouragement to you today to keep going and keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Hey, I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for another daily dose for spiritual growth.